welcome all to my talk. I will now start sharing my presentation. So today I'll talk about my journey for the past 7 years of reconnecting city dwellers to nature and the role tiny forest has played in that and that of the adventure. Um, so let's see. Well, this is me. Jan has already introduced me, Chief Tree Planting Officer at Ivy and Nature Education. I've been leading the tiny forest movement since 2014, and I'm on a mission to reconnect children to nature. This is an image of my dream for every community, every local school, and maybe even every business park or company to have their very own tiny forest, a densely planted native forest the size of a tennis court. And I think this dream might have started 30 years ago. This is me, 10-year-old me, in my favorite climbing tree. And this tree was set to be cut down when I was 10 years old. And I remember taking this picture because we had just started an action group with my sister and my friends to save our tree. So we wrote to the municipality, collected autographs, and tried to stop the tree from being cut down. But despite our best efforts, the tree was still cut down. So still a very sad day in my life. And years later, when I found this picture again, I had forgotten about this local action group. It made me wonder, why did I want to save this tree? Of course, it was our climbing tree. But I grew up in a very in a small village of 3,000 people and a lot of woodlands nearby. So we had big trees in our garden. We had a small forest behind our schools and a bigger forest where I would just go independently when I was a youngster. So I think by spending a lot of time in nature, I started loving nature and wanted to protect nature. Uh, well, and that is changing because this tree that was cut down is not the only tree that has been cut down in the past few centuries. I found this map online. It's the deforestation of the United States of America. And in the past 400 or 600 years, about 90% of the primary forest in the United States has been lost. I think in the Netherlands it's even more. We've cut down most of our ancient woodlands. So this fact alone should encourage us to restore our lost forests. But there is another reason, and a reason that might be even more compelling than just for the sake of planting forests. Um, well, if you look at this, it's kind of hard to believe that about 500 or 600 years ago, most of the East and Central America looked like this, like an ancient woodland. And in just a couple of 100 years, we've basically gone from this picture to this. Or to use the words of Joni Mitchell, we've paved paradise to put up a parking lot. So right now, I think Nadina talked about this in her keynote that 83% of the people in the United States live in an urban environment. In our country, it's 3 out of 4. So most people live in an environment that looks more like this than a pristine woodland. And that has effects, and those effects really hit me emotionally after meeting these two kids. I think it was in the autumn of 2014, and the boy on the left, is his name is Yassine. He was 10 years old, about as old as I was when I was saving my favorite climbing tree, and I was interviewing him about his childhood memories in nature. And as it turned out, he didn't have any. He had never been to a forest. And this basically blew my mind because it's a big problem. 3 out of 4 people in the country I live in live in an urban context, and they don't go to nature that often. And after the meeting, I thought, well, I need to know how far does he live from the nearest by forest. And as it turned out, this is the route he had to take from his house to the nearby forest. It's a 10-minute bike ride. So 10-minute bike ride was too far away. So the first 10 years of his life was spent in Utrecht, the fourth biggest city in the Netherlands. But yet he had never visited a forest that was just 10 minutes away. I think this meeting haunted me. It kept me awake at night because I was thinking about all the major environmental problems this generation of kids are dealing with, are going to have to deal with climate change, loss of biodiversity, the plastic soup. And how can we expect these kids to care about these problems if they never visit nature, if they've never been to a beach, if they've never been to a forest? So how can we reconnect children growing up in cities to nature? Well, and the answer to that question came from a very unexpected person, an industrial engineer in India. I stumbled upon his TED talk in September 2014, and in this 4-minute video, he shows how to convert a parking lot, a desert, or any piece of barren land into a lush green forest within just 2 to 3 years. And he was talking about the Miyawaki method, a method he was taught by his Japanese mentor. I instantly fell in love with this idea because it was a fast-growing forest, and within 2 or 3 years, the forest was bustling with life. So I really wanted to create a forest. So I reached out. I'm gonna fast forward a year in the future, because a year later, Shubhendu came to the Netherlands, and together with him, a local school, a landscaper, the municipality, we planted the first Miyawaki, the first tiny forest of the Netherlands, in the city of Zaanstad. And this is a picture of the planting day. You can see the kids. The kid is holding up a holly. We planted many other different species that were suited for the location. But after the planting day, it was kind of a exciting time because we didn't know if this method would work, because Shubhendu had created a lot of forests in India. He had created forests in the United States, in South America, but never in Europe. So would this method work in the Netherlands? Because there was a lot of criticism because of the dense planting, 3 trees per square meter, an intensive soil preparation to create a loose, nutritious structure. And we didn't know. So I was very happy that the Ministry of Agriculture gave us funding to do research into the effects of the tiny forest, and to create a time-lapse video of the growth so we could monitor how it develops. And that's a video I'd like to share with you right now. It's a 2-minute video, and it shows the first 2 years of growth of our very first tiny forest in the Netherlands. So as you can see, the forest grew quite well in the first 2 years, and this is a picture I just took of it of the our first forest in just a couple of months ago. By the end of June, the trees are already about 10 to 12 meters high, and it is bustling with life. This is just a couple of pictures of the people of the species that you can find in the forest. So dragonflies, butterflies, caterpillars, bumblebees, mushrooms. So in the first year after planting it, scientists already discovered 172 different species of animals. And the scientists of Wageningen University, they've continued to do studies, and just this week they published their 4-year study into the biodiversity, the carbon sequestration, and the effect of tiny forests on the heat island effect. The report will be translated in English, so later this year it will be available in English. If people want to read it, I'll share it with Jan, so you can read it if you like. I'll just share some of the major conclusions. Well, between 2017 and 2022, the ecologists discovered 1,167 different species of plants and animals. That's excluding the tree and plant species that we plant ourselves. They monitored 11 of our 170 tiny forests in the process. And they also calculated the carbon sequestration capacity of a forest. They found that a young forest, a 200 square meter forest with 600 trees, on average, sequesters about 127 kgs of CO2 per year. This can be a very abstract number, but it's about the same amount of CO2 you emit when you drive for 600 miles in a car. So that's the capacity, and they expect this to rise to 250. So the sequestration capacity will double within the next few years as the forest matures. And one of the major effects we found is that these tiny forests already have an immense cooling capacity on hot summer days, and we've been suffering from a lot of heat waves lately. But inside of the forest, it's up to 20 degrees Celsius. Sorry that I can't translate it into Fahrenheit. 20 degrees Celsius cooler than the nearby street on a hot summer day. So it offers a lot of shelter and relief on hot summer days, and can help to cool our cities down and prevent heat island effect. So these are the main effects of the tiny forests found by the scientists for the past few years. But to us, a tiny forest is more than just a forest, biodiversity, carbon sequestration. We want to engage communities. We want to engage school children in planting and using the forests, so we can forge a connection between people growing up in cities and nature. Um, well, I think Yanni asked me, so what's so special about this Miyawaki method? So yeah, first of all, I'd like to share a bit, give you an overview of the method, where it originates from, and later I'll get into how we connect school children and local community, how we engage them with the forest. Well, this is Akira Miyawaki. Sadly, last year in July, he passed away at the age of 93 years old. He's a Japanese, very famous botanist. In the 1960s, he spent 10 years of his life mapping the entire natural vegetation of Japan. He wrote an encyclopedia that's about 2 meters wide, and every herb, shrub, tree of Japan is organized by region. And he used that knowledge to restore 3,000 native forests, and he planted most of these forests next to heavy industry. He called them environmental protection groves. And I think it was in 1997 that he had a keynote speech at Harvard University, and that's when he well, press the world to bring Shinju no Mori to the world. So what does he mean by Shinju no Mori? This well, before the Industrial Revolution, when the Japanese founded a village, they left a little piece. They built a shrine to honor the forest guardian god. And because these shrines and the forests around it were preserved throughout the ages, they were protected by faith, they remained intact. Um, and it was at these Shinto shrines, these Shinju no Mori temples, the forest where the gods dwell, that Akira Miyawaki found the potential natural vegetation, the climax vegetation, the native trees of Japan. And he estimated that just 0.03% of all the trees in Japan were just native. So he started collecting seeds, set up nurseries to basically try and grow forests using native trees. And there was another effect he noticed because Japan suffers from massive natural disasters like tsunamis, earthquakes, wildfires, and he noticed that when there were native trees around the temple, the built environment was still intact after the earthquake, where other buildings were wiped away. These trees that had grown there for many centuries appeared to be adapted and even protected the built environment around the temples from destruction of natural disasters. So he noticed that these forests might play a crucial role too in making our land more resilient in the face of climate change. So Shinju no Mori, bringing forests to the world. And he devised a method for that. He was trained by Reinhold Tuxen, who laid the groundwork for the potential natural vegetation theory. And after he mapped the entirety of Japan, he started creating forests in Japan, in China, in the United States. He's planted all over the world. And his method basically consists of 6 steps. It always starts with a site check, the site where the forest will be planted. After that, you carry on with a natural vegetation survey to determine the species and the plant community you will plant in your forest. You create a design and finalize your tree species list. You do soil preparation to give your forest a great start. After that, it's time for the planting ceremony, a great engagement event for people, and you have to, for the first 2 or 3 years, there has to be done some maintenance in order for the forest to grow out to be a self-renewing ecosystem. Yeah, I'll just show you the 6 steps with one forest I created in a parking lot to just give you a bit more feel on how we operate, how we use this method to create forest in urban settings. Well, this was a location in a big parking lot in the middle of Utrecht next to the train station. And when we do the site checks, we look at a few things. First of all, we look at the soil type. Well, as you can see here, you see a lot of sand, but that was not the original soil type because this was about 20 years ago. This was still a peatland and a very clayey soil. Well, the groundwater level was about 1 meter deep. The soil, because it was sandy, because the sand was underneath the parking lot, does have good drainage, but it doesn't hold nutrition. So we had to fix that. There was a lot of underground infrastructure, cables, piping. We had to remove lampposts to create this forest. And usually we scan the neighborhood for the current vegetation because it can tell you a little bit about the plant community that you need to plant here. But there was no vegetation. It was a parking lot. So we knew we had to deal with sandy soil and that the groundwater level was quite high, so that we were dealing with wet soil. So we took that into account when we did the step of the soil preparation. So after we have done the site check, we look for an ancient woodland with the same circumstances. So we looked for a reference forest that had the same circumstances as our planting location. And when we visit this ancient woodland or a nature reserve nearby, we do a natural vegetation survey. And what we do is we basically mark off 200 square meters and check out what trees, what shrubs, and what herbs are growing in that location. And we try to notice which species are dominating, which are in higher layers, which are in the shrub layer. And that way we can get a feel of what a forest will look like. Well, here you can see I marked 1 square meter in an old forest in the Netherlands. And I started counting the saplings. And in this square meter, you can see I counted 36 different saplings of 4 different species. And I think this is a very interesting insight, because Miyawaki noticed that this is the way a new forest regenerates itself, with a lot of saplings in 1 square meter. And that's why he uses the dense planting method, because uh, it mimics nature. So after doing a natural vegetation survey, we came out with a list of trees, shrubs that we wanted to plant in our forest. And after the natural vegetation survey, we move on to the design of the forest, and creating and finalizing our planting list and ordering it with a nursery. So this was our design on the parking lot. We were really limited to this space. I prefer forests to have a more organic design, because this has straight lines, but that had to do with underground infrastructure, and that was unchangeable. So this was the patch we were able to use. But in other forests, we've used many shapes. I like the rounder, more organic approach to designing. But this is the shape we were forced to take with at the parking lot forest. Um, well, we after doing the natural vegetation survey, the potential natural vegetation of Holland has been well mapped. We know what forest communities we have in the Netherlands, so we cross-checked the tree list of our vegetation scan with known plant communities. And because it was quite wet, it used to have a clayey soil. We knew it was an ash elder forest, and you can see it has different layers. So the canopy layer, understory shrub layer, and the herbaceous layer. So these were the plants we chose to plant on that particular location, because it was the potential natural vegetation, and suited for the soil and groundwater circumstances. Well, after we finalize the planting list, we need to create the perfect circumstances for these trees to grow. So, as probably many of you know, trees need a soil that is loose in structure, that has a lot of air in the soil, has a rich, humus-rich, nutritious topsoil. A forest has a natural mulch, so that protects the soil. And they need moist, and they need good drainage. So because we're dealing with a lot of construction sand, we added a lot of compost and manure to the soil, uh, to make sure it had enough nutrition for the young trees, to make sure it retained enough water, because then the sand tends to drain really well. And after the planting, we cover it in a layer of mulch to protect the young trees. So after the soil has been prepared, and we've got a layer, 50 to 80 centimeter deep, loose, nutritious layer that has good drainage and holds nutrition and moist really well. It's time for the planting ceremony, and in those planting ceremony, we planted 600 trees, so 600 young saplings. And I already talked about why we plant so many species per square meter. It's to mimic the natural regeneration of a forest with many saplings per square meter. We didn't plant 36 like the forest does itself, but 3 per square meter. We plant with kids. That has one really obvious reason, because it's a great way of engaging the local community and of kids really getting a sense of ownership of their own forest. But there's another reason, because adults, we've been trained to plant in patterns, to plant trees in straight lines. And Miyawaki said, well, nature is random. It's all so, and the best people to mimic this are children, because they don't care about patterns. They are just random. So if you want maximum randomization like nature, plant your forest with kids. So that's what we do. Our tiny forest is always adopted by a school, and they assist with the planting ceremony. After the planting ceremony is done, we cover the soil in a mulch layer, wheat straw, or if it's available, we use a native leaf compost. It basically acts as sunscreen for the soil. It keeps the soil moist. It protects the trees from frost, the roots of the young saplings from frost in the wintertime. And as it decomposes, it adds to the humus layer and feeds the soil and feeds soil life. Um, so this is basically a very brief overview of how to create a forest using the Miyawaki methods. And within 2 or 3 years, the forest becomes a self-sustaining, self-renewing ecosystem, and it doesn't need much maintenance. But because we plant in cities, there is some maintenance necessary because we're dealing with public spaces. So we have sometimes things get broken. Sometimes we have litter. We actually had a drifter spending the night in the forest. So you have to make sure it stays a safe and fun place for kids to enjoy. So how do we do that? Basically by creating a plan, and we always have three parties at the table. We invite people from the municipality, from the school, and from the local people, and we basically agree on who does what. This is more a drawing of how we do it, but we actually make official contracts in which we say, well, the municipalities is responsible for the maintenance, but they delegate mulching and picking up litter to the school, and they delegate the tasks of picking up litter and de-weeding, making small repairs to the local people. In that way, we ensure that kids and locals engage with the forest, and we ensure that it's still a safe place and it's a fun place for kids to play and explore nature. So this is the way I would do it. And because well, I talked about that I'm on a mission to reconnect children with nature. And although planting a forest is a great way of reconnecting, I wanted those forests to be a place of exploration, a place where our kids could experience a sense of wonder and really immerse themselves in the natural world. And because these forests grow fast and they simulate biodiversity, there's a lot to discover, but we really wanted to formalize it. So that's why we developed a tiny forest ranger program, because we want the kids to be actual forest rangers and do tasks that actual forest rangers would do. So we really feel that by letting them plant their own tree, and they monitor the growth of the tree for 2 years throughout the seasons. When they get older, they calculate how much CO2 the tree sequesters. They monitor the biodiversity on the tree. Well, they help with maintenance, which I already talked about. So watering the trees, remulching, calling a municipality when repairs need to be made, and picking up litter. And this really adds to their sense of responsibility. Well, as I talked about, they monitor the growth of the trees. They do that throughout the seasons to see how the forest develops. They also map out the biodiversity by shaking the trees and see what they can find. So they shake out all kinds of animals like grasshoppers, spiders, beetles. And they also study soil life because the forest soil is very rich. Then the scientists found that too, that it has a great number of worms, slugs, toads, woodlice. So it's fun to discover what takes place underneath your feet. And we also developed a series of lessons to assist teachers to use the forest as an outdoor classroom. And it's not just nature lessons. We want kids to do their math and their language outside as well, because it gives them a context-rich environment. And it really helps them to grasp the subject better. So that's what we try to do, take learning outdoors. And to assist teachers in teaching outdoors, every tiny forest has an outdoor classroom, much like the one you see right here. It helps the teacher because they have a proper place to give instructions to the class before they send them off into the forest. Or it can just be a place where you can just sit and enjoy the forest, and where the community can have birthday parties or connect with each other. So creating a place like this where people can just sit, relax, and enjoy nature really helps too. Uh, well, and I think there's a growing body of knowledge that shows that nature has many benefits for health and well-being for children. So by immersing children in nature at a young age, they grow up to be healthy, happy, and more creative adults. Um, and I just wanted to share a little of the science behind this, how this works, because to me, it shows why it's so important to reconnect children to nature and immersing them in mini forests or bigger forests if you have the opportunity. Well, I will first revisit this picture, the urban landscape, and I just want you to sit and just take this picture in for like half a minute and just see how it affects your body, your mind. Try to feel that. So that's the end of this picture. Let's revisit the temperate rainforests and see. Take a few seconds to immerse yourself in this picture. Well, I'm gonna. I've conducted an experiment with you to show you two pictures, one of nature, one of the urban setting, and I just want to try and explain to you how it affects the brain, how it affects your eyes, looking at both pictures. This is an research that was done to see to track eye movement. So people were shown an image of nature and an image of this industrialized area. And as you can see on the left, there are less points where the eyes looked, and it tends to center in one area. On the other hand, on the right hand, you see that the eyes are all over the place. They're looking for something they cannot find. And that's the thing about our eyes. They are always scouting the environment for beauty, something that fascinates them. And in nature, it's easy for us to find something that fascinates us. And as we get into that sense of fascination, of wonder, a deeper relaxation comes over us. So we're less stressed out. We're less concerned about what people feel of us. And parts of the brain that are connected to self-reflection, to self-worth, they really light up. You can see this in brain scanners. So this natural habitat has a stress relieving impact on us, and we can see that in public health records. There was this PhD, Yolanda Maas, at the Amsterdam University, and she compared the amount of green space people had in their neighborhoods to data on public health. And what she found was that people who grow up in a very urbanized area have a 21% increased risk of anxiety disorders, are almost 40% more likely to develop a depression, and have a 50% increase of schizophrenia. That's wild. And they also have an increased risk of obesity, diabetes, type 2, cardiovascular diseases, and asthma. And on the other hand, if you grow up in a much greener area, you have less chance of catching all of these terrible diseases. So there's a great need to regreen our cities. But the good news is that you don't need a lot of nature to experience this effect. One tree can make all the difference. In this study at Cornell University, the scientists, well, they looked at how much green can children see from their window, from the homes where they live. And even after corrections for economic status and poverty and social status, there was still a big link. The more green kids could just see from their window, the better the more green they saw, the better they were at coping with negative life circumstances like losing a pet or losing a grandparent. So this one tree in front of their window helped them to cope with the stress of losing their grandparents, and they were better able to process these negative life experiences. Just one tree outside of their bedroom window made all the difference. Imagine what a tiny forest in your neighborhood or schoolyard can do. Uh, well, and there's another way in which being in a forest improves health, and this is a study that came out last year. And in Finland, they converted concrete schoolyards into forest floors. They planted some blueberries, they planted some heath plants. Children grew some vegetables, and within a month, the scientists found that the T cells on their skin and in their guts and other immune indicators rose to the level of kids who who go to the forest every day. So just by being in the forest, connecting with the soil, you you get a more healthy gut, which is a good indicator for your immune system. So it really helps improve nature. So to me, this tiny forest is a great way of immersing urban city children in nature. And by this, we can help them to grow up to be happy, healthy, and creative adults. And and then they also, kids who grow up in nature also tend to be more develop more societal ambitions, so they want to make a difference. And kids who grow up in urban areas, research shows that they have more ambitions like power and status. So and I can relate to my own experience. Growing up in nature made me want to protect nature. So I think that's the other thing why it's important to do this. And for the past 7 years, we've planted 260 tiny forests throughout the Netherlands. The blue line represents the forest we've planted in the public spaces, and the green line is people taking matters into their own hands and converting their own garden into a mini forest. So far, 17,000 tiny forest rangers have been trained and have participated in the program. And each year, we will add new, because those forests will remain there for at least 10 to 20 years. So children will keep connecting with the forest. We couldn't have done that without the help of 1,500 local volunteers and about 1,100 school teachers who assisted us in the projects and helped us to re-engage kids with nature. We still have big plans for our tiny forests. We're on our way to plant 100 more tiny forests by 2026. And we're also looking to plant tiny forests in business parks to promote outdoor working. And as of now, we're working on a new tiny forest platform and a new e-learning to assist people within the EU. But if you're in the US, you can follow the course as well, to show them how to convert their garden, their schoolyard, their business park into a forest. Because I think it's Yuval Harari, the author of *Sapiens*. According to him, the biggest strength of human beings is not our intelligence or ingenuity, but it's our ability to cooperate, to exchange knowledge, and to copy ideas. So if you want to copy this idea and join the Guild of Mini Foresters, this is a list of resources you can use. We have a lot of online courses, a handbook that you can download. I recommend ordering Hannah Lewis's book, Mini Forest Revolution. She does a great job of describing what's going on in the world right now with regard to the Miyawaki forests. If you want to know more about the effects on the human brain, you can download that. And also, there's already people in the USA working on creating Miyawaki, on creating tiny forests. Ethan and Maya are creating natural urban forests. So if you guys want to connect with them, see what they're doing, they're very happy to get in touch with you. So this was my a tiny talk about the tiny forest. I want to thank you for your attention, and may the forest be with you.